Welcome into the Trevor Staub Show, episode number 41. Today we have a special guest. We've got Josh Hofstra from Lonestar Disc. He is in charge of their marketing and business development there. We're going to talk to Josh all about Lonestar Disc, how the company was founded, how he got started with them, and we're going to get you all the information you need to know about that Lonestar Ranger team that everybody's been talking about. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, we're here with our guest now. Today we have a very special guest. We have the head of marketing and business development at Lonestar Disc, Josh Hofstra. Thank you so much for joining the show, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. So just to kind of give an intro here, just start by talking about the different roles and things that you accomplish for Lonestar Disc.
Yeah, so on a day-to-day basis, I call myself the front half of the mullet. So anything that you see, all the business in the front, whether it's website pictures or media, social media, YouTube videos, helping our pros with PR, any of that stuff, it's all managed by me. So I'm Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, you name it.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's cool. In disc golf, I've talked to a lot of people that have worked for more startup disc golf companies and some that have been around for a while, and there's a lot of people like you that I feel like have a lot of different roles within the company. That's something that I was able to experience when I first started here at Foundation. What are some skills that you've been able to pick up and learn that maybe you didn't know before once you got into that job?
Yeah, so I've been doing marketing and business development for the better half of like 8 years now.
Okay.
And it all started from the same thing. I've always worked in small business. So you get to know the owners, and then the owners go, hey, can you wear another hat? And you go, yeah. And eventually you wear enough hats, you go bald. So
yeah,
you got to watch out, I see you wearing the hat right now. But I actually picked up Photoshop skills by making memes with one of my old bosses.
Nice.
So we would make memes of each other throughout the day, and it became like a fun little thing. And eventually that taught me Photoshop and Adobe Premiere, and it really just took off from there. On the disc side of things, it's been awesome to be able to bring my culmination of skills together, whether it's people management, business management, marketing development, all that stuff. All comes together at the end of the day in a full package. I'd say the disc golf stuff is where I've actually been able to flex my muscles the most compared to other companies.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's another cool thing. Disc golf is obviously such a young industry that when we bring in people, and I always love to see companies that bring in qualified individuals who work outside of disc golf and can take those skills and bring them in, because I think that's when we see the most growth within our sport. There are a lot of things that disc golf has been able to accomplish just figuring it out on their own, but when you bring in experienced professionals that have seen it applied in other industries, that's when things can really jump forward. So that's really cool that you've been able to do that. As far as your disc golf background, where does that begin? Where did you first get involved in the sport?
Yeah, so it's actually a cool story. I moved to Conroe, which is where Lonestar Disc is based out of.
Yeah.
And I ended up going and I did my first creek walk. So apparently down south, you get hot, the pools are full, you go walk a creek, I guess.
Interesting.
And so there's actually a creek that runs right alongside our local course, and we were walking it one day, and my brother was like, oh, hey, there's a disc golf disc. I was like, oh, sure, yeah. And he's like, well, have you ever played disc golf? And I was like, no. I was like, maybe when I was younger. I think Edge actually held a program when I was back in Illinois. I'm originally from Chicago.
Okay.
And so we found these disc golf discs, and he's like, well, hey, next week let's go play. And that was coming up on 3 years ago.
Wow.
And so I remember looking up these videos and, watching these pros, and, hey, this is my favorite disc, or this is how I did this. And I think I shot like plus 36 the first time I went out. I was like, this is so much fun. Like, I've always tossed a Frisbee around with my family. And from there, I was in the automotive community at the time, doing the same thing I do now for another company, and it instantly became a passion for me, where every waking moment I spent thinking about disc golf, wanting to play disc golf, and it got to the point where I just said, hey, I'm going to make a transition, and I'm just going to start making content, and that's where Lonestar picked me up. They found my videos and said, hey, we want you to come make videos for us.
Wow. Okay, so with Lonestar, at what point in the company history, because Lonestar obviously hasn't been around very long, at what point in that company history were you picked up? Was it right at the beginning, or was it just a few months in?
Yeah, so the company's been around since 2019. I think September of 2019 was when they first released their two molds. I think it was the MIDI and it was either the Penny or the Mockingbird. Anyways, they released these molds, and so they'd been around for about 2 years before they picked me up. When I first started here, it was October a year ago, Yeah, so I've been there for a year and a couple months,
Okay.
and we had 800 likes on Facebook and 300 likes on Instagram, and through obviously marketing and brand awareness and being able to get our plastic into people's hands, obviously we've done videos with you guys, and so love being able to do what I find is my passion, which is introducing people to stuff I love.
Yeah.
And so through your content, through other people's content, we're now approaching, I think, 14,000 likes on Facebook and 5,000 follows on Instagram. So
Wow.
super cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly witnessed. I didn't even realize Lone Star had been founded that long ago. I remember kind of the initial whispers. Actually, the first time I heard of Lone Star was when I was in Texas in 2020, I think, and there was a few locals down there that were kind of tossing around because, they're from Texas. So they were like,
Right.
hey, check out this armadillo, check out this. And we're like, oh, okay. Like, we get that quite often, where people would try to show us discs. But I remember them sticking out to me. There was guys that were throwing them. But I looked into Lone Star a little bit, and I saw, I'm not sure I'm sure you're pretty brushed up on the company history now,
Yes.
being a part of it.
Yeah.
But I saw that they actually started with a oil rig. They already had the injection molding machines because they were making things for oil rigs. Go into a little detail on that and how that got going.
Yeah, so Lone Star Molding is actually our parent company, which is where
Okay.
Lone Star Discs was founded. So the Dillards, their last name is Dillard. So Terry Dillard, the father of the two sons who started Lone Star Disc, owns a company called Lone Star Molding, where we make oil field valves and seals and seats and all sorts of stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
It's so cool because, just like you said earlier, it all ties back in. They have decades of molding experience. And so downturn happens in the oil field in 2019, and they go, hey, Dad, can we make a mold? And he goes,
Yeah.
you know what? Yeah, fine. We got some spare time. Feel free, make a mold. And they made like the flippiest fairway driver on the planet. Like the first disc they designed was like unusable, right? And so from there, it was like, okay, well, what can we do next? Let's make this disc or that disc. And so because they already had the molding knowledge, to make a viable product that people will actually want to use was easy.
Yeah.
And so that's where the MIDI was born, which is actually Travis's nickname for a mid-range. He calls it the MIDI. So very cool stuff.
Yeah. And I think a huge thing with that kind of origin is, when you're starting a disc golf company, you're seeing most companies these days are going to other manufacturers to have their disc produced. Another company that comes to mind is like a Mint Discs, right? Like they have MVP making their disc, because the barrier to entry to get into injection molding is no joke.
Yes.
First of all, obviously the cost of just getting those machines, we're talking about you're going to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and then just figuring it out if you don't have experience. Do you think like there were some parallels between what they were already doing to making the discs that really expedited that process?
Oh, 100%. So the same way that they're making these seats and everything like that, the way that we mold our product is slightly different than the rest of the industry standard, and that's why we're able to do what we're able to do as quickly.
Okay.
I think my favorite part about working at Lone Star is Terry's nickname is the Creator. So
Okay.
we'll have a pro come by and they go, hey, you know what? We started off with 8 molds last December.
Wow.
We
Yeah,
had 8 molds. We now have 30.
Yeah.
So in 1 year, Terry was able to go, okay, learning. Terry only got into disc golf this year because it started taking off. They hired me on, right? Everybody's kind of working together. We're all, cohesive bonding there. And Terry goes, you know what? I might as well start playing disc golf. So he starts playing in February. And so the molds that come out in March are the Dome and the Tumbleweed, which are 2 flippy fairway and distance drivers, because he needed that for starting off, first playing that extra distance. And so the way that his mind worked was, well, okay, I need these discs, and so there's got to be people out there that need those discs too. So he creates the mold himself, goes out, we'll have a mold in less than a month, and now you have a new disc.
Yeah. I say, because with the infrastructure that you already had, are you able to machine all of your molds in-house?
Everything is in. So this is one of the things that sets us apart as a new company is the fact we do everything in-house. So we machine our own molds. We do the molding ourselves, ship it, stamp it. Everything is in-house from Conroe.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've visited factories myself that have been around for, decades and don't even have their own CNC milling, the ability to make their own molds. And I know that's the biggest bottleneck when it comes to making discs is the expense of molds if you're not doing them in-house is just like insane. There are a lot of disc golf companies I know that have debt related to that, and then just it's very time consuming. So that is definitely huge, and it makes sense because clearly there's already a ton of Lone Star molds. There's been a bunch that have been able to come out. One thing I was wondering is, obviously, if you want to create a disc, there is the observation of being able to look at other ones that have been made and kind of work from there. But did Lone Star ever have to kind of bring in any consultants of somebody who had been in the process, not just for the shape of the disc, but the right plastic blends, or is that something that you kind of just tinkered with?
So cool part is the plastic that we use in our oil field side is the same plastic we use in the disc side.
Fascinating.
So
okay.
The reason why our stuff might feel or react or not beat in or be a higher quality than the other industry standard is we are using something higher than the industry standard. So the process of creating that first disc was, hey, we already have the material here, Dad. Can we just make the mold and put it in? He said, yeah, go ahead. And so Alpha, Bravo, Lima, Glow, all that stuff is oil field grade plastics, high quality stuff that we use. And then on top of that, we've had such an outpouring of support from everywhere. I haven't met a single person that hasn't wanted to help us in some way, shape, or form. And so we've had people come alongside us and say, hey, this is what this wing shape does, or this is how this looks, and if you just tinker this or do that. And it's been really cool because obviously, it's all a learning process.
Yeah.
But again, Terry is a mad genius. The reason why we call him the creator is because he goes, okay, yeah, I learned that on this mold. Great, we're going to apply this to these molds. Okay, yeah, great. This is what this wing shape does. Now for the next one, I'll know that this is going to be more stable. So
yeah,
it's been super cool to watch the growth of the company, both inside and out.
Yeah, that's super neat. And I think a huge advantage of using the same plastic, that means that you can essentially, you're already buying in such bulk quantities for the oil rig stuff that you can use that bulk quantity pricing for the discs, and that is a huge advantage because I'd imagine that there's not many disc companies buying plastic at the kind of bulk that you might be for the oil rig stuff. So that certainly is huge. But yeah, that's really cool, and I think. Certainly testament to your ability to make those molds and tinker is there's a lot of molds in the Lone Star lineup that I feel are ones that companies struggle with, especially newer companies. One that comes to mind is the Warbird. A lot of companies struggle with that fast, overstable driver, and I think the Warbird is like really, really, really good in that slot. There are literally companies to this day that still can't find that mold. So that's one that certainly sticks out. So I think that's been huge. One thing I was kind of wondering was obviously Lone Star joined the market in 2019. You're starting to emerge now. On really big, but the disc golf market has become very oversaturated in the past few years. There's a lot of new companies popping up everywhere. What is Lone Star's plan to really stick out and separate themselves from the rest in the disc golf industry?
Yeah, I think that's the cool part for me on the marketing side is how can I convince you that my brand is better than everybody else or has something to offer. And I think the best part for me is it's because it is different. We do make our own stuff in-house. We are playing by our own rules. We don't have to wait on going back to the supply chain stuff you were talking about just a second ago. We don't have to wait on plastic. We order it, and we already order in such bulk that our product, we're not waiting on a shipping container to come from overseas. There was recently, Paige Shue just made a remark. Love Paige Shue. She's awesome, but she just made a remark. She said, I left this company because I was waiting weeks or months to get these discs, and we don't have those problems.
Right.
By the way, Paige Shue is not coming to Lone Star as much as everybody says. Yeah, she's amazing. No, she's amazing. She's been one of the pros that I've been following since I first started playing disc golf back when she was Paige Bierkes, and so happy for whatever direction she decides to go and wherever she ends up. But those supply chain issues we don't have, and so being able to find our plastic. The other side of that is when your plastic doesn't beat in as fast as your other competition, I'll take 7 Warbirds, and if I lose one, it's going to fly exactly like the other Warbird I just lost.
Right.
That's a huge motivating factor for me as a disc golfer, that I can have the confidence. I go, okay, these aren't limited run, and they're all going to fly exactly the same if I get it the same exact mold. So that's a huge part for me. And then we have an awesome family environment, man. Again, the Dillards own the company. Mm-hmm. I'm the only one in a management position that doesn't have the last name Dillard. So it's very cool, and I'm very honored that they've chosen me for the position, obviously, as we've grown together. with the brand. It's been really great to see the family values, the core values, being put into effect. A lot of people were worried when we signed Nico. They said, "Oh, Nico, he could be trouble." And you go, "No." When you're surrounded by people like us, it's very, very easy to feel the love and feel the respect and all that stuff that we have for not only the sport of disc golf but for our players.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, that being able to meet the demand right now and turn around disc quickly is definitely going to be a huge part, just because right now we're at a time, and it's getting a little better, but we're kind of in that time where your favorite disc might not be in stock anywhere, and all of a sudden it's going to be like, okay, well, what's another disc that flies like that? Who's another company I could try out? And that's where having the availability is huge. It's funny you mentioned Nico, because that kind of segues into my next question. You recently announced that signing of Nico Castro, very talented player, longtime veteran on the tour, very recognizable name. Obviously been shrouded in some controversy as of late with the recent suspension. What was the thought process behind that signing, and what do you really think he brings to the table for Lone Star Disc?
Yeah, so, honestly, we'd been talking with Nico since Belton. So he had approached our tent, again, going back to my start in disc golf. I loved watching Nico throw overstable drivers on Big Annie Flex. I think that's my number one argument to everybody. He is so much fun to watch, right? Yeah. The second thing in all of this is we believe in second chances, right?
Sure.
We work with a lot of different organizations that are, whether it's veterans or rehab centers or any of that stuff, where everyone deserves a second chance, right? And so after the suspension, the first thing we did was reach out to him and said, "Hey, man, I know you need some time, right, obviously, to go through the motions here and kind of feel out your emotions on that matter." And I can truly say that after talking with him in Belton and talking with him after the suspension over the past few months, he's definitely a changed man, right? I can tell by the way he talks, the way he handles himself. Nico is an awesome individual. The stuff that he's done for the sport, it can't be matched. And I think a lot of people choose to look at the very small moments in his career instead of the guy's been playing for longer than most people who play disc golf have been alive. Right? Very true. And so you go, we're taking small segments of a guy's life that has been a lifetime of success for the sport of disc golf, right?
Sure.
There was once a point in time where it was Nico versus the world. And so I think the biggest thing that he brings to the table is not only does it give him an opportunity for clearing his name, right? He wants to leave behind a legacy, but it also gives us an opportunity to come alongside somebody that's asking for help and go, "Hey, we're here," right? That's a part of our core values. That's integrity right there.
Yeah.
You're reaching out to me so that we can do better together. I'm going to come alongside you and 100% support with that. Absolutely,
yeah. I think that's a great idea, and I think certainly Nico does have that name recognition. There is always a spotlight there, so I think the signing makes a lot of sense in that respect for sure. But that being said, you obviously were able to extend Chandler Kramer this offseason, which was a pretty good move as well. Is there still more to come for the offseason this year?
Man, so those that follow me on my Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they'll see I'll post up little stories every now and then of just like, man, I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful, because there are people coming to the team that I've been watching for a long time that, like, my first experience watching a disc golf video is they're in the bag.
Okay.
And I'm going, that person is on my team. Like, it's a huge opportunity for me, a huge opportunity for Lone Star. I try not to fangirl as much as possible because, we try to keep a professional appearance, but we're adding several pros.
Okay.
Several pros. Top pros to our team, and it's been really fun for the rumor mill. Yeah. I love seeing all the Twitter stuff where it's like, Brody Smith to Lone Star, or and it's like,
speculation's great.
I'll get on there as Lone Star Disc and I'll heart the tweet because then it tells everybody Lone Star Disc likes this, and everyone loses their minds. Oh my gosh, right. Like, again, all the respect to Brody. I know he's not in talks with us. But no, it's been a lot of fun this offseason. We have a lot of big names coming, both on the FPO and MPO side. It's gonna be great.
Okay, and is it right now? Is it kind of getting marketing material ready? Like, is there any kind of timeline you could give me for when we might start hearing things?
Next week. So.
Wow. Okay.
So here's the cool part. Again, it's all politics now, right? Yeah. Lone Star Disc has reached the upper echelon. I'd say by this time next year, we will be top 5 disc golf companies in the world.
Okay.
Just stating matter of fact, our production this year has rivaled production of companies from last year that are considered top 5. So super cool to see, right?
Awesome.
Coming from 800 likes and 300 likes to now
Yeah.
we're actually knocking on the door. On top of that, the pros that are coming here will bring us to that next level, right?
Yeah.
Chandler Kramer and Leah Sinagini did such an amazing job on tour last year, spreading all of the knowledge about our discs and who we are as people, right?
Yeah.
Truly amazing to see where we were at last year or this year leading into next year. The only thing that's holding us back are contracts, and this is where the politics come into play, where you go, I'm still in contract with this company until December. And this is
Right.
where I would ask you, maybe something you guys can talk about on Grip Locked or even on your show. Do you think that contracts should run October to October?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Because how am I supposed to sign a pro and make a big announcement in the offseason if I've got to wait all the way until January?
Right. Yeah, you're right. It would make a lot more sense to run that way for sure.
Yeah, so lots of big stuff coming. I've got a lot of big announcements in January, and I think one that I'll be able to announce next week.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. I think, yeah, getting those big pros, it's certainly a big step for a company because, it establishes a credibility for your line of discs, certainly if you have a pro who has won on the tour, had that success to say they trust this disc and this disc alone, that definitely, ups the level of credibility that a company carries. And that's a big part of moving forward. One thing I wanted to know, so Lonestar Disc, I think, have some of the more creative names for their discs. I think the stamps are really cool. There's some really cool artist work done there. It's kind of interesting, though, because you have a bunch that are Texas themed, right? And then it kind of goes into some nautical themed discs. You've got the harpoon, the curl, and then you've got just outliers in there, like the BB6. So explain to me the thought process behind the disc naming, and I'm all for never really. Some companies like to stick to a strict theme. Some companies don't. I don't really mind either. So what's the process there at Lonestar?
Yeah, so it's actually really cool. Before there was any marketing direction, and they were just making plastic to make it right for their family members and friends. I call those the OG molds. So back in the day, our OG molds were all named after Dillards. So the BB6 is named after Terry's grandson. It's his initials and his baseball number, which is why the artistry stamp is a cyborg or a robot throwing a screwball that's understable.
Okay.
The curl is named after one of his granddaughter's long curls. She has big curly hair.
Wow.
So there's names like that. Penny Putter, Travis was stationed on the USS Lincoln, and his daughter's name is Penny. So
oh my goodness. Okay, wow, that's neat.
So there's super cool names like that, and I really want to do something special in the future, obviously the marketing side, and make those known. Those are the OG molds back in the day when you first joined our team, right? It was this eight molds. That's all you had, right? And then there's stuff like the Armadillo. So the first disc that we actually sat down in January of last year and released was the Jackrabbit.
Yeah.
We came up with the name Jackrabbit for not only is it his granddaughter's name, Jacqueline, or middle name, but it's also a West Texas rabbit. It's known all throughout West Texas. They're everywhere. And that started, okay, we're going to sit down. We're actually going to start marketing, right? Yeah. Jackrabbit, Armadillo, Guadalupe, right? And we start coming up with these Texas-themed names. We've got and then we went off on a tangent. somewhere along the road, we went off on a tangent. And now we've got Chuck Norris names. Yeah. So we've got the Texas Ranger, the Walker, and the Lone Wolf, which is named after Lone Wolf McQuaid. And so obviously we get to have fun with it as a manufacturer that does what we want, right? Yeah. But for the most part, the names are either named after a Texas historic landmark or after one of the Dillards.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I didn't know that about the Dillards. That's very cool that they have that kind of personal touch to it.
Absolutely.
All right. So one of the things that I've been dying to talk about, the Lone Star Ranger team. It's the hot topic. It's the hot topic right now. I'm sure you knew this was coming.
Yes.
And I definitely have my own thoughts on it, but I want to kind of get yours. So I started, like everybody else, started seeing this make rounds on social media when everybody started announcing they're part of the Lone Star Ranger team.
Sure.
It kind of achieved that meme status.
Big time.
People saying like, "Oh, I'm on the Ranger team too. I'm on the Ranger team." So my question is, first of all, I understand the power of an AM team, and I also understand that there are plenty of all PR is good PR situations, and I believe this falls very firmly under that because a lot of people heard of Lone Star that probably haven't during this whole situation.
Big time.
So my question is, was the strategy with this team to always make it massive, or did that kind of evolve when all the applications started pouring in?
Yeah, so it's such a cool story, man. Again, we are amateurs. Everybody, the Dillards are amateurs. I'm an amateur. I'm not a professional. And so we know what that means to be a part of a team.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so when we first developed the Ranger team last year, I think we had like 400 or 500 applicants. And of those 400 or 500, I think we accepted 120.
Okay.
Right? And so we said, hey, you 120, you guys are ambassadors for the sport. You guys are out there. You're helpful. Of those Ranger team members, we saw such an incredible thing happen on the AM side, whether it was volunteering for events, volunteering to help us in our booth, going out of their way, hey, I'm working with this school or I'm working with this shelter, I'm on the Ranger team, can I help, can we get some discs to donate? And so we wanted to take that to the next level because we believe in the amateur side of disc golf. It's the lifeblood, it's the life force. And so I think it's funny to me when people are like, oh, they're doing it because they want to get everybody in the team. It's like, it's not that. We had over 2,000 people apply to join the team.
Yeah.
And we have around 600 Ranger team members. So I've personally read every single application. Luckily I could read pretty fast, but going through and selecting those Ranger team members was so important to me because it's who we are. Like, again, at the end of the day, I'm an amateur, you're an amateur, he, she, we're all amateurs, okay?
Right.
If you want to be a part of my brand, something that I've helped, and it's not my brand, right? The Dillards own it, but they've positioned me to kind of help run the face side of it. But if you want to be a part of something that I want to be a part of, and you're passionate about it, come on, bring it on,
Right.
join the team. Like, we're going to be doing some really special drops for the Ranger team, which the memes are all fun, right?
Yeah,
there's some solid ones that I saved that are all in good fun. But I think people are going to be shocked the amount of love and support that we also give our Ranger team. Everybody thinks that it's just a walk-on team that you can just sign up for with an email. Why don't you just go apply to join the Ranger team? But it's actually something that's very carefully cultivated and motivating us. Not only is it motivating our pros and motivating the Ranger team, whatever, it motivates us to do more for the community as much as we already do. So it's super cool to be a part of, to be honest.
Hey, yeah, I love it. I think that, I understand the power of the AM teams is real because in disc golf, there is something so special about being able to say you're a part of a team like
Absolutely.
that. I mean, I remember when I was first getting into the sport, had I been a part of a AM team, a street team, something like that, I would have thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And the thing about it is when you have AMs like that who are treated well by a company and get to feel that special impact, they're going to tell the world about that company. The reach that they have, I would argue that an AM team like that is bigger than ex world champion disc golfer throwing your disc. It is really a serious effect. So I thought it was crazy when it started happening. Like I was like, wow, this is huge. But I understood it. I was like, hey.
And to be fair, to be fair, 600 people on social media all at once saying the same thing. I'm joining the Ranger team is a lot. I understand. Trust me. It was a lot for me because I had to like every single one of the posts. And so I understand that the way people saw it was a flood because now the algorithm's going, hey, we got to throw this content in everybody's faces. And so I thought the marked safe from Ranger team or, all the other funny memes. Again, I take it as a complete compliment, the fact that we have created this ambassador team of these amazing individuals that everybody's going to see their content,
Yeah. Yeah, I was watching and I was thinking like, oh wow, like Lone Star is getting a lot of PR right now. Like this is huge for their marketing. So that was crazy. I know that a lot of people were definitely curious to hear about that process for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, because we actually just had our AM team applications up, and I think we had to go through like 1,000 or so applications. So we definitely know what that's like. But it's awesome. It's awesome having people passionate about the sport, wanting to get involved and help support. So one last thing I want to do, I like to do this with, I've had a few interviews with newer companies to try and like promote the disc a little bit because we love Lone Star. We sell Lone Star, FoundationDisc.com. So we're all here to promote that. But some discs that we've really enjoyed. I have the Mockingbird or the Warbird in my bag right now. I think that if somebody is out there looking for that overstable destroyer and they're hard to find or a force, and the Mockingbird is so overstable, so fast, really good for that slot. Hunter loves the Mockingbird. He loves that hyzer flip that he gets out of that. But to kind of help everybody out with the Lone Star molds, if they're not familiar yet, I'm going to name a few popular molds from other companies, and I'll have you kind of give a comparison.
Perfect.
So that way we can kind of help you along. So first one, what is the Buzz? That straight mid-range, that flagship mid-range.
So that is the Texas Rangers. So the Texas Rangers 5.5 -1.1, and from everybody that I've heard, it becomes their favorite mid-range once they throw it. It is surprisingly torque resistant for being a neg 1-1. So there's a lot of other discs that fill that slot in the market that claim that number, but we all have seen them turn and burn, or they're too overstable, and so that disc, I think, is the most perfect disc in our lineup. It's used for every shot.
Okay, all right. And then I kind of mentioned the Warbird earlier, but what would you say there are any other discs that kind of fill that destroyer slot?
Yeah, so it really depends because, again, Destroyer's been made for how many years now? So there's different runs of Destroyer. So I've had people, well, my Paul Macbeth one or my, this one or that one. And so I have found that the buoy, we also make the buoy, doesn't feel like a Destroyer, but it flies like older runs. We actually just released the Nimitz to our team, which will be getting dropped next week to the public. The Nimitz is more Wraith-like, but it's also more flippy Destroyer. So
I like that.
There's several discs in our lineup that we've kind of cultivated between those different slots.
Okay, and then another one would be like a Firebird. What's like the Firebird slot?
Now, which Firebird are we talking about? Are we talking about an FAF Firebird? Are we talking about a Sexton? What are we talking?
Yeah, not the Sexton, like 12 times stock, very overstable, that kind of Firebird.
So the Chupacabra, by far, is going to be the beefiest 9-speed you've thrown next to a tilt. I love my Chupacabra for that. Yeah, so the reason we made that was we had one of our pros try out a couple of our discs, and he was using a Mad Cat, and he's like, yeah, it flies like a Firebird, but I need to fly like a Firebird, like, right? Or I needed to fly like a tilt, and you go, well, we don't do that, right? We don't ever go and grab another company's disc and cut it up and leave it in a picture next to. No, I'm just messing. I'm just messing. But no, we don't ever. You can't directly copy somebody else's disc, and so what's our take on it, right? If I was going to make an overstable 9-speed, what would I do? And so we actually use different molds of our own and lay this and do that and kind of lay those designs over. And we made the Chupacabra, and Terry rolls up to the facility. We have a nine-hole disc golf course at the front of the facility. He rolls up in his Dodge Ram. And the pro that's standing there with me, he goes, so did you flip it over? And he goes, nope. And he goes, okay. Rolls the window up and keeps driving. It's like, as long as it's like a super overstable 9-speed, and I think the Chupacabra is one of the best utility 9-speeds on the market. It's overstable, useful overstable.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's certain overstabilities that's just like, I can't even do anything with this, right? What's the point? Whereas that one, it's so good. It's just so good. So I use it a lot for a lot of ace runs and a lot of forehand holes. So
awesome. Well, hey, there you go. If you're listening to this or watching and you're not sure what Lone Star molds to check out, those are 3 that have some comparisons for sure. I've thrown every single one of the molds except for the one that has been released, I guess. And there really isn't any bad ones. They all have great flights. It's a really good plastic. And like I said, I'm bagging the Warbird right now, and I think it's fantastic. I have one of the Chandler Kramer Friends stamps on there.
I appreciate that. Thanks, man.
Yeah. But so if you haven't checked out Lone Star, make sure you can go to foundationdisc.com. You can check out our Lone Star collection. We're constantly restocking that and trying to keep that up to date. But Josh, thank you so much for joining the show today. It was really cool hearing about the company. I think that's an awesome foundation for a company, no pun intended. But you really have a great start there, having that infrastructure, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the future with Lone Star Disc.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast.
Of course. All right, and thanks once again to Josh for joining the show today. It was awesome hearing about Lone Star Disc, just learning a little bit more about that company. I think it's got a really unique start with the oil rig situation and that company. That is certainly a unique story, and it was just awesome hearing his perspective on the whole AM team thing, and that they've got some lofty goals. So it's exciting to see what will happen with Lone Star in the future, but we'll be back next Thursday with another great guest, and we'll see you then.